from 1939, Son of Frankenstein. Alright, I know what you're thinking. This title sounds stupid. What, did Frankenstein's monster have a son, and the Wolfman's the godfather, and did the Bride of Frankenstein mate with the monster at the end of the 1935 film? No. None of that's true. What this is the third film to round out the trilogy of the 1930s. Now let's bring you back to the 1930s, in the early 30s, when obviously Universal released Dracula and Frankenstein in the same year, then The Mummy and The Invisible Man, and then it was full on for them. But then by the mid-30s, Colin Clive portrayed Dr. Victor Frankenstein. Actually, they called him Henry Frankenstein in their version. In the 1935 film, he ended up dying in 1937, and Universal changed executive owners, and they weren't interested in monster films by this time. But they re-released Dracula and Frankenstein and King Kong in 1938, apparently, and that was huge. And so then they decided to produce the third Frankenstein film. This is what this became. And what this is about is it follows Frankenstein's son, Dr. Frankenstein's son, who comes to the town to inherit the Frankenstein castle, which is where the monster was created in his laboratory, and all the townspeople are really paranoid over him coming back. And this is like 20 years after the end of Bride of Frankenstein, and there's been little sight of the monster, but people don't go near the castle. And it's played by Basil Rathbone, who was basically the Jude Law of his day, and he's like a gentleman, loud-spoken type, and he's really curious and fascinated by his father's work, and he comes there with the goal of trying to reinstate the reputation of Frankenstein as a good name. But he kind of gets wrapped up in the whole lore, and he has and then the town inspector comes to talk to him, like, yo, people are freaking out, like, I'll come to help you when the monster's on the loose and whatnot. And he's like, and he says lines like, oh, I'm very happy that you're concerned about my welfare, Inspector, but there's no need to waste your time worrying about it. And he's like, about any monsters being created here. And the inspector doesn't believe him, and neither does the audience. We all know he's a Frankenstein, that he's gonna make a monster. And the cast is, I mean, it brings together three heavyweights. Basil Rathbone is mostly known for his Sherlock Holmes portrayal in the early 40s. But up to this point, he still did like 18 years worth of films, including a bunch of Shakespearean plays. So he plays Frankenstein's son. He's got the presence to play a Frankenstein's son. So like I was saying, and then Boris Karloff plays the monster for the last time. This guy basically forged the iconic image of Frankenstein's monster. And this is the end of the decade, so this is the last time we get to see him. Basically, this is the last time we get to see him because he says that Boris Karloff used to say that the monster at this time became a joke, and the butt of all jokes. Which is in other words saying I'm a butthurt thespian and my feelings are hurt, so I'm not going to play the monster. I want respectable roles. And then we get Bela Lugosi, the Bela Lugosi, who plays Count Dracula. He ends up playing an Igor in this film. And that's where we lead off in the plot now. So at this point, Igor shows Frankenstein Basil Rathbone's character, the monster, which is in a crypt on ice. No one really knows about it. he's waiting for a scientist to come and resurrect it, and Igor's happy, and it's an awesome portrayal by Bela Lugosi. It's amazing that he could have the presence to play Dracula and then play like, such a sick and sickly character like the Hunchback Igor, and really get into that role in a believable way. It's really amazing to see. And so basically, Wolfgang Frankenstein, that's Frankenstein's son, Basil Rathbone. His name is Wolfgang Frankenstein. He's knee deep in resurrecting the monster, and he sees the monster as a man, and the townspeople see it as a monster, and they play up that whole theme the whole movie. And then the monster's basically on the loose. He ends up resurrecting it through cosmic rays, and there's a lot of great lines. It's pretty well written. And he's kind of like in denial of the monster's existence, and the monster only obeys Igor's commands, and Igor ends up killing a bunch of people, jurors who convicted him years before. And that's what happens and then eventually, Wolfgang Frankenstein, Basil Rathbone, he's basically throwing darts the last 20 minutes talking to the inspector, and the inspector knows that the monster's created, but Wolfgang Frankenstein basically gets in this trance and haunted by the whole castle and the lore of Frankenstein, and until he snaps out of it when his son gets kidnapped. He comes to the castle with his family. I have to note that it wasn't just him. It was him, his wife, and a young kid. And there's servants in the castle, And so he ends up swinging on a rope like it was Tarzan or something, and knocking Frankenstein's monster into the sulfur pit. Also, Frankenstein's monster has a fur vest in this, which Marvel copies in their Marvel Frankenstein series in the 70s. That's of note. So anyway, awesome film. I just about to rewatch it again because you could get a lot out of it because it's dialogue heavy. And you just love the whole world of Frankenstein, the mad scientist, the monster. And these are like the last good Frankenstein movie you ever get, probably ever, because it's been redone even by Universal in the following decade, where it just became a monster mash joke where they just included all the monsters just to sell even more, and then all the franchises became. So this was before the whole franchise became a joke, So I give it a B+ overall. This was JBM from VillainRadio. Thanks for watching. I just recommend Frankenstein comics, Universal horror films. Go back and watch that series. It's really more amazing than you might think. You might think that just because it's old that it's not as good, but they're great scripts. And I'm out.